Welcome back to the Wonders of Creation classroom series. In today's class, we're going to leave the land entirely and consider the wonders of creation in the waters. With over 70% of Earth's surface being covered by water, both freshwater and saltwater, sea creatures account for a huge variety of classified animals. So today, we will visit the depths of the ocean floor, search for some camouflaged creatures in reefs and seabeds, and cruise down some tropical rivers. So join me, Eric Lyons and Kyle Butt, as we dive into understanding God's wonderful creation. All right, our first adventure is going to take us to the murky rivers of South America. When you're being hunted by some of the ferocious, many-toothed predators of these rivers, it's good to have defenses. And there is probably not a more exhilarating defense mechanism than what we find in the electric eel. These unique aquatic creatures can pack an electric punch. But what's their secret for not electrocuting themselves? Let's let Eric Lyons reveal the design behind these charged creatures of the Amazon.
With their 6-foot-long, tube-shaped, scaleless bodies, electric eels look and move more like snakes than fish, yet scientists classify electric eels as fish. Adding to the confusion, however, is that scientists do not classify electric eels as eels, but knife fish. But enough about the confusion. What about the electricity? How do electric eels produce electrical charges? Well, it's all in the design of the animal. This curious creature has 3 pairs of organs, 6 in all, which make up nearly its entire tail region, about 80% of its body. These organs are made up of about 6,000 electroplaques. Electroplaques are muscles arranged like batteries. These muscles don't contract like normal muscles. Instead, they give off electrical charges. At will, an electric eel can send signals from its brain through perfectly positioned nerves to its battery-like muscles. What's more, this eel can choose to produce a small current of electricity, or it can carry out a shock of up to 600 volts, enough to stun a horse. Electric eels use this electric current for a variety of reasons. They obviously use this ability for self-defense purposes. Who wants to bother a fish that can electrocute you? They use it in order to stun or kill their prey. They use it to communicate with other electric eels. Furthermore, since they normally live in slow-moving, murky rivers and streams of South America, scientists tell us electric eels can set their batteries on low and create an electromagnetic field that helps them navigate. With such an ability, they can detect underwater objects, including prey and predator. How can purely naturalistic evolutionary theory ever adequately explain a creature as extraordinary as the electric eel? How did the first electric eel evolve from a non-electric eel? How did all of the batteries of the first electric eel get put in precisely the right place in order to produce electricity after receiving signals from the animal's brain by way of special nerves? How can evolutionists logically explain the electric eel's ability to not shock itself whenever it produces electric charges? How would it have known it needed to evolve a special layer of fat or insulation around its body in order to protect itself from electric currents that it had never yet produced? And if the animal had not yet produced its special insulation, how would it have survived continued electrocutions without it? The only explanation that logically explains the first electric eel is the existence of a supernatural designer. The design argument for God's existence is an actual logical argument. Anything that exhibits complex functional design demands an intelligent designer. The electric eel exhibits complex functional design. Therefore, it must have an intelligent designer. This argument for God is logically sound and observationally true. The simple fact is, to deny either premise of the design argument is to deny reality, while to deny the conclusion is to deny logic. Some act as if natural selection and random mutations over millions of years is all you need for amazingly designed living things. But such processes cannot create complex functional design from nothing. Such processes cannot change non-design into design, and they certainly do not and cannot change one kind of animal into another. The simple fact is, natural selection does not design anything. As one evolutionist admitted long ago, natural selection may explain the survival of the fittest, but it cannot explain the arrival of the fittest. It cannot logically explain the arrival of the very first fully functional electric eel.
Eric makes a great point here. In the natural world, if you have the best traits or have the strongest strength, then as an animal, you're more likely to survive. But surviving with the best traits, that doesn't provide an answer for how you first got those traits. This is where the perspective of intelligent design provides a reasonable answer and evolution cannot. A strong electric eel with all of its capabilities has a great chance of surviving in its environment, but it came to have these capabilities by the design God put into His creation, not by accident. Now, while electric eels have a shocking defense mechanism, our next sea creature has a rather slick defense mechanism. Though it is nicknamed the slime eel or the snot snake, the hagfish is neither an eel nor a snake. And before I say too much, let's let Kyle Butt introduce us to this fish with a rather surprising response to danger.
What were you doing on October 21st of last year? Were you celebrating National Hagfish Day? Probably not, because you most likely didn't even know that such a day existed. There's a good chance you don't even know what a hagfish is. If that's the case, let me introduce you to one of the most fascinating and repulsive creatures that God has ever designed. Some people call this creature the slime eel. Others refer to it as the snot snake. But it's neither an eel nor a snake. It's a fish. There are over 60 species of hagfish, some of which can grow as long as 4 feet long. The average is about 18 inches long. The hagfish is most well known for producing massive amounts of slime. Hagfish slime is so interesting because it's truly unlike any other substance in the world. When a hagfish feels threatened or is attacked, it has approximately 100 glands that it uses to secrete slime. When the slime's in water, it can expand to thousands of times its original size in less than a second. A tiny amount of slime, about 1/1000th of an ounce, can fill a 5-gallon bucket full of slime almost immediately. And furthermore, the slime is super soft. In fact, researchers believe it to be about 100,000 times softer than Jell-O. Imagine a super snotty sneeze being shot out of the pores of a worm-looking fish, and you start to get the picture. What does the slime do for the hagfish? Research shows that the slime is designed to cause fish that attack the hagfish to choke and gag. And if they don't spit the hagfish out, they can't breathe. So they're forced to release their hagfish. But if the slime is so slimy, how do the hagfish get out of it? Don't they slime themselves? Actually, they do. But they tie themselves into a knot and run their body through that knot, squeezing the slime off like a squeegee. Isn't it amazing how God designed them to be unslimable? But not only does slime help hagfish survive, but its chemical properties are interesting for humans as well. The slime is composed of mucus and proteins, which together make it similar to a wet spider web. The proteins are very tightly coiled, but when they are stretched out, if you were to connect them together, they make the slime very super stretchy. The perfectly designed coiling system is the reason the slime can expand so quickly. Each hagfish contains enough proteins to produce strings that, if you were to connect them all together, would be literally thousands of miles long. The proteins and slime they produce are stronger than nylon, but they're about 100 times thinner than a human hair. Researchers who study the slime believe it can be used to create all kinds of helpful fabrics. It's so soft and stretchy, it has the potential to be used in such things as bulletproof vests, car airbags, and even diapers. Oh, and did you know that because the slime is composed of a large amount of protein, it's edible? That gives a new meaning to the term slug burger, doesn't it? Who would have thought that God's slime recipe was so useful? Hagfish are equipped with more tools than that. They can go for months without eating. When they do eat, they don't even have to chew their food. They can absorb nutrients directly through their skin. Imagine putting a hamburger on your arm and it seeping through the pores into your body. And furthermore, hagfish are covered with very loose skin. What's so important about loose skin? Hagfish don't shoot slime unless they feel threatened or are bitten first. That means they have to be able to live through a big chomp from a predator such as a shark. Their skin's not very tough, and you can poke a hole in it very easily. So it doesn't act like a shield like scales on other fish do. The amazing design is that it's not attached to the fish's muscles or body. That means when the predator bites down on the hagfish, its body simply squeezes over to the side of the loose skin that's not feeling the pressure. Although its skin often gets a puncture wound, its vital organs and internal body stay safe. Hagfish pose a real problem for those who believe in evolution and don't believe in God. When we look in the fossil record, we find a hagfish fossil that supposedly dates back 300 million years. And now, we know that the world is not that old, and it's only a few thousand years old, but I'm just using those evolutionary numbers to show the problem. That fossil shows that hagfish have remained basically unchanged for 300 million years. That means they haven't evolved or changed into anything else. For this reason, hagfish are called living fossils, because the hagfish alive today are the same as those in the fossil record. Furthermore, because of the unique body makeup of the hagfish, the theory of evolution has no real group or category where the hagfish fits. Those who understand the truth about creation, they can easily understand this evidence. On days 5 and 6 of creation, God created all the different kinds of animals. They didn't evolve from or into any other kinds. The hagfish doesn't have to fit into any evolutionary models because it didn't evolve. It was created. It remained the same kind of fish throughout history, as we have seen in the fossil record, and it has not evolved into any other kind of creature. God designed and created the hagfish, and evolution can't explain it. So when the third Wednesday of October rolls around this year, be sure to take a few minutes to celebrate National Hagfish Day. And be sure to remember the creator who designed such an interesting creature. And if you happen to be in a Korean restaurant on that day, order a plate of gamjanjeo and wait for them to bring you a delicious meal of hagfish.
I think we can thank Kyle for not providing a very appetizing advertisement for that hagfish meal, which is precisely the purpose of the hagfish's repulsive defense mechanism. If you don't really have jaws and sharp teeth, your body's not covered in scales, you don't have poisonous tentacles, and you can't create an electric shock, what else are you supposed to do except slime your attacker to death? Good thing that the hagfish was designed with that ability instead of having to wait for evolution to accidentally provide it. All right, electricity and slime are two ways we've seen that sea creatures can defend themselves, but with our third example, we find a new strategy employed. The cuttlefish offers some incredible hiding techniques. And of course, it's not going to work unless you have all of the design functions in place. And the cuttlefish certainly does. Listen as Eric exposes the tactics of this sea creature.
Its eyes are like something from a Batman movie. Its feeding tentacles shoot out of its mouth like birthday party blowers. Its blood is bluish green and its ink is black. Scientists believe that these amazing animals have a complicated system of communicating with each other, including the use of dozens of different body patterns. Making the cuttlefish even stranger is the fact that it's not even a fish, but a mollusk. Who named this animal anyway? A cuttlefish has an internal shell called a cuttlebone. Thus, scientists classify it as a mollusk. Perhaps the most amazing feature of cuttlefish is their ability to blend into their surroundings. Cuttlefish have been said to have the world's best camouflage skills. Cuttlefish have the ability to change the texture of their skin to mimic the shape of certain barnacle-encrusted rocks or corals. What if we could do that? These mollusks can move their entire bodies into a variety of positions. For example, while swimming next to large seaweed, cuttlefish can mimic the grass's motion by positioning and waving their 8 arms in a similar way that the seaweed sways in the water. This makes it very difficult for both attackers and possible prey to know exactly where the cuttlefish is. In a study a few years ago, scientists placed horizontal and vertical stripes on the walls of different cuttlefish tanks. How did the cuttlefish react? These creatures spread their bodies out horizontally when in the horizontally lined tanks, and they raised at least one arm vertically when in the vertically lined tanks. But what must annoy predators more than anything is the cuttlefish's ability to change color and to do so quickly. A cuttlefish can change the color of its entire body in the blink of an eye. If this mollusk wants to change to red, it sends signals to its pigment sacs to change to red. A cuttlefish can hide from other sea life by changing to the color of the sand or seaweed. It can also appear as a strobe light, quickly blinking on and off, likely to confuse predators. So extraordinary are these masters of camouflage, as some have called them, that government researchers have even looked into the possibility of copying cuttlefish camouflage for use in the military. Researchers are enamored with how cuttlefish achieve their quick and convincing camouflage. Nevertheless, the researchers admit it's highly unlikely that anyone could achieve that same level of camouflage. Scientists find it difficult mimicking the color matching abilities of the cuttlefish as well as its texture matching ability. In fact, no one knows exactly how cuttlefish match their backgrounds so effectively, especially since experiments have shown that cuttlefish don't look at their skin to check how well it matches the background. What's more, if, as some scientists believe, this animal is colorblind, only seeing in shades of green, how does it always choose the color most helpful, like changing to the color of sand when on the ocean floor? Cuttlefish are remarkable creatures. Evolutionists have called the animal a genius. Researchers admit that cuttlefish are sophisticated, intelligent, tailor-made creatures with a secret code. Yet evolution is often the very first word many think of to explain the existence of the cuttlefish. But how can intelligence arise from non-intelligence? How can something tailor-made have no tailor? No one would suggest that Morse code is the product of time and chance, yet some evolutionists would have us believe that the cuttlefish's secret code is the product of millions of years of mindless accidents. The fact is, naturalistic evolution cannot rationally explain the cuttlefish. The real code giver, the intelligent designer who tailor-made the cuttlefish, is God. As the psalmist proclaimed, "This great and wide sea in which are innumerable teeming things, living things, both small and great, O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom, you have made them all."
Fighting, fleeing, and hiding are all mechanisms of defense that we see in the animal world. But the cuttlefish's hiding abilities is a next-level capability. As Eric said, engineers would love to be able to do the same thing a cuttlefish can, or at least even mimic it in some way. Isn't that incredible that the top minds of scientific innovation want to do the same thing that a mollusk does, a creature related to clams and snails and slugs? God's design can truly be seen in every creature. As we continue our underwater exploration, we're going to stay in the temperate and tropical shallow ocean waters where the cuttlefish lives and go looking along the coral reefs and seagrass beds for a tiny little creature that baffles evolutionary thinking. Let's watch and listen as Eric shows us the wonders of the seahorse.
The seahorse is one of the most curious-looking animals on the planet. Though it has a head like a horse, eyes like a lizard, a tail like a possum, and can swim like a submarine, the seahorse is considered a fish. Scientists put the seahorse in the pipefish sea dragon family and refer to it as hippocampus, a name derived from two Greek words, hippa meaning horse and campus meaning sea creature. Most fish swim horizontally by moving their bodies back and forth from side to side, somewhat like a snake wriggles. Seahorses, on the other hand, are upright and swim vertically like a submarine that can go up and down. A seahorse has one fin on its back and one on each side of its neck that help to propel it. But what helps maintain its balance as it goes up and down in the water is the gas within its swim bladder. Like a well-designed submarine that manipulates gas in order to submerge and resurface while remaining parallel to the water, the seahorse can alternate the amount of gas in its bladder to do the same. The life of the seahorse is dependent on a perfectly designed bladder. With a damaged bladder or without a bladder altogether, a seahorse would sink to the ocean floor and die. How can evolutionists logically explain the evolution of the swim bladder if seahorses have always needed them to survive? If they have always needed them, then they must have always had them, else there would be no seahorses. But there are seahorses, and small though they be, they stand as powerful witnesses for the Creator. The tail of the seahorse is wonderfully designed. As with the possum and certain monkeys, God gave the seahorse a prehensile tail, which can wrap around and hold things. Like seahorses use their tails to wrap around seaweed and anchor themselves so that fast-moving water currents do not carry the rather slow-moving seahorses far away from their homes. We all know that female dogs have puppies. Female cats have kittens. Women, not men, naturally become pregnant and carry and deliver babies. With seahorses, however, things are a little or a lot different. Seahorses are the only known animals in which the males actually get pregnant, carry the babies, and give birth. God designed the male seahorse with a special kangaroo-like pouch near its belly. At just the right time during the courtship, the female seahorse deposits hundreds of eggs into the pouch of the male where he fertilizes them. For the next few weeks, the male seahorse carries the unborn seahorses before squirting the fully formed babies out of the pouch. If nothing like this process is known in the animal kingdom, why would anyone think that evolution can logically explain it? How do undirected time and chance stumble across a different and better way for a particular kind of fish to have babies? How can purely naturalistic evolutionary theory adequately explain how the first male seahorse became anatomically and physiologically capable of getting pregnant, carrying babies, and giving birth? Suffice it to say, seahorses are as baffling to the theory of evolution as duck-billed platypuses are. The unusual seahorse cries out for a creative creator who cannot be contained in the naturalistic box of evolution. As the patriarch Job asked, "Who does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this, and whose hand is the life of every living thing? Ask the beast, and they will teach you, and the fish of the sea will explain to you."
You know, the regular horses we're accustomed to here on land are on average 1,200 pounds, and they stand 5 feet at their shoulders. A little seahorse is only 10 ounces and can fit within the palm of your hand. Such small wonders provide such a unique view of God's design. Evolutionary theory can't explain uniqueness. It needs consistent, gradual changes of features and traits. But to have an example of the only known creature where the male carries the developing young until their birth, well, that defies evolutionary explanation. All right, our last and final sea creature in today's class comes from the cold, deep waters of the Pacific Ocean. Growing along the ocean floor, it is one of the simplest forms of animal life. But Kyle has some interesting information about the complexity designed into this small creature. And it applies to an area of our everyday lives that may surprise you.
The last time you picked up a phone to call your business partner about work or to call your friend, you might have been using fiber optics. Last time you logged into the internet from your home computer, you may have been using fiber optics. We hear a lot about fiber optics these days, but what are fiber optics? You know, in simple terms, a fiber optic cable has a center that's made of very thin glass. And light can travel through the glass and relay light signals, and those light signals reproduce sound and other information. Fiber optic cables stretch thousands of miles all across the world, and they send information quickly and very, very efficiently. But there are some problems with these cables. First, since they're glass, they can be brittle, which means they can crack and they can break. And digging up the cables and replacing the broken ones, lots of times very expensive. And second, in order to produce the cables, factories must use very high heat, which is also expensive. Fiber optics are amazing, but they could use some improvement. Amazingly, scientists have found an animal that has a wonderful fiber optic cable. The sponge, called the Venus flower basket, lives in the deep waters of the ocean. And this sponge produces several optic cables that grow out of its base. And these tiny cables are about as wide as a single human hair, and they grow to be anywhere from about 2 to 7 inches long. And the fibers produced by the Venus flower basket, they've got several advantages over the man-made fiber optic cables. First, they're produced in cool temperatures. You know, if we humans could learn to copy this, well, we could save millions of dollars. Second, the fibers from the sponge are very strong and they're very flexible. And they don't break like the ones that humans make. In fact, the fibers from the sponge are so flexible they can be tied into knots. You know, if scientists could learn to make such strong, flexible fibers, we wouldn't have to spend as much time and money repairing the ones that we have now that break because they're brittle. This remarkable sponge was featured in an article in USA Today, in which one of the researchers commented that nature often provides us a better way of doing things. You know, it's a self-evident truth that where there is design, there must of necessity be a designer. Where there's a painting, there must be a painter. And those who work in the field of biomimicry, the field in which they study nature and they try to mimic or copy the things that they see there to invent helpful technology, they freely acknowledge design in nature. For example, what seems to be one of the most popular websites on biomimicry offers a course titled Biologist at the Table. In the course summary, the site describes the participants as those who are biologists and naturalists with a passion for the natural world and an interest in applying nature's elegant design strategies to human challenges. It simply does not make much sense to think that over a period of billions of years, evolutionary chance processes developed elegant design strategies, the likes of which even our most educated, brilliant minds have yet to understand. Intelligent scientists have been working on fiber optic cables for many years just to get them to work as well as they do now. Yet the Venus flower basket has strong, flexible fibers that are produced in cool temperatures. If there is design more intricate and efficient than is produced by highly intelligent humans, the designer of that design must have an intellect equal to or greater than the humans themselves. The writer of Hebrews accurately noted, "For every house is built by someone, but he who built all things is God." God's design in the sponge's fiber optic cables proves that animals like the Venus flower basket, they didn't evolve. Design demands a designer.
Have you ever heard of the study that Kyle mentioned called biomimicry? This field of study proposes to look for the elegant design strategies in nature. You know, that sounds to me like they're looking for the fingerprints of design, the evidence of intelligence that has created strategies with the purpose of overcoming challenges. All right, now's the time in our class where you show your own powers of attraction, for the correct answers, that is. Let's see what you learned today. Our first question, the electric eel can produce a high-intensity shock to stun prey and protect from predators, but the eel can also release a low-energy discharge. Question number 1, what design purpose does the electric eel's low-energy discharge serve? All right, at the high end, an electric eel has enough energy to kill a horse. But when discharging low energy, the electric eel uses it for navigation, sensing the environment around in those murky, muddy river waters. All right, question number 2. The hagfish produces a special slime from its body. So, how does the hagfish slime help it? All right, remember that ultra stretchy and expanding slime? It's a defense from predators. It causes predators to choke and release the hagfish. All right, our next question. If we think about that unique camouflaging cuttlefish, we might ask the question, have humans designed adaptable camouflage as good as the cuttlefish? Well, the answer is no. The ability to change colors and textures and to position your body to mimic your surrounding is so unique, man has not replicated it. Maybe someday we'll be able to reproduce mollusk powers. All right, our 4th question. We want to see if you remember those little seahorses. Of all the animals that we know about, besides the seahorse, do any other male animals give birth? The answer is no. And that is something that doesn't fit with evolutionary theory. If this was a trait selected by natural selection to be more beneficial than the seahorse's predecessor, then why did the next stage of evolution from the seahorse lose that ability? It just doesn't make sense. All right, our last and final question comes from the Venus flower basket segment, where Kyle introduced a recent field of study. And so my question is, what is being mimicked by those in the field of biomimicry? Now, if you just said bio, then I'm going to need a little bit more from you. What does bio mean? Well, it means life. So biomimicry is the field of study to find ways of mimicking life's complex functions, and specifically those in the natural world around us. Why mimic these abilities? Because they hold purpose and beneficial processes. Would we really want to mimic a randomly mutated result like evolution proposes? Or does it make more sense that we are mimicking an intelligently designed creation? I'll leave that for you to consider. As we wrap up today's class, I want to think back to a quote that Kyle provided when talking about the Venus flower basket. The quote said, "Nature often provides us with a better way of doing things." That's an interesting statement, except it isn't just nature as some mindless force, but rather God has often provided better ways of doing things in nature. We just need to recognize them. Thank you for being part of our class today, and we encourage you to be ready for our next class as we continue navigating the wonders of creation.